The delivery truck turned onto County Road 14 at exactly 8:45 on a Tuesday morning in April of 1986, and Walter Jennings saw it coming from half a mile away. He was standing in the driveway of the farm he'd owned for 34 years, coffee cup in his hand, watching that green semi with the John Deere logo grow larger as it approached. Behind him, the barn doors were open. His 1954 Farmall Super M sat inside, freshly serviced, ready for spring planting. Beside it, his 1961 International 560, both tractors older than his son, but still running strong. The truck slowed as it approached the farm entrance, turn signal blinking, diesel engine downshifting. Walter set his coffee cup on the fence post and walked out to the road. The driver rolled down his window. "Morning, got a delivery for Jennings Farm. 2 John Deere 4450s. You Walter Jennings?" "I am." "Great. Just need you to sign here, and I'll unload them in your yard." Walter didn't reach for the clipboard. "Who ordered these tractors?" The driver checked his paperwork. "Says here David Jennings. That your son?" "It is." "Well, he filled out all the paperwork, signed the financing agreement, had them delivered here. So if you'll just turn the truck around," Walter said quietly. The driver blinked. "Excuse me?" "Turn the truck around and take those tractors back to the dealership." "Sir, I can't do that. These are sold units. Your son financed them. They're his property. They're not his property until they come off that truck, and they're not coming off that truck, not on my farm." The driver looked confused. "Sir, I don't understand. Your son ordered 2 brand new tractors, top of the line. They're already financed in his name. Don't you want to at least look at them?" Walter's jaw tightened. "I know exactly what they are. I know exactly what they cost. And I know exactly why my son ordered them without asking me first. Now turn that truck around before I call the sheriff and have you cited for blocking a county road." The driver stared at him for a long moment, trying to decide if this old farmer was serious. He was. "Yes, sir," the driver said finally. He picked up his radio, called his dispatcher, explained the situation. There was a lot of back and forth, a lot of confusion. But 20 minutes later, the John Deere delivery truck was heading back toward the dealership, with 2 brand new 4450 tractors still strapped to the trailer. And Walter Jennings walked back to his barn, picked up his coffee cup, and waited for the phone call he knew was coming. "Now, before we go any further, I need you to understand something. This isn't a story about a stubborn old man refusing progress. This isn't about being cheap or old-fashioned or resistant to change. This is about a father watching his son make the same mistake that destroyed half the farms in Kansas in the 1980s. And if you want to know why Walter Jennings was willing to humiliate his own son rather than let those tractors onto his property, hit that subscribe button right now, because what you're about to hear explains why some families survived the farm crisis and others didn't. The phone rang at 9:30. Walter was in the machine shed, organizing tools, when he heard it. He let it ring 4 times before walking to the house and picking up. "Dad, what the hell did you do?" David's voice was tight, angry, embarrassed. "I sent the truck back." "I know you sent the truck back. The dealership just called me. They want to know what's going on. I ordered those tractors. I signed for them. They're mine." "Not on my farm, they're not." "It's not your decision. I'm 28 years old. I'm a partner in this operation. I have a right to—" "You have a right to make your own decisions when it's your own farm," Walter interrupted. "This is still my farm. My name is on the deed. And as long as that's true, no equipment comes onto this property that I don't approve." Silence on the other end. "David, you financed 2 tractors that cost $60,000 each. That's $120,000 in debt. Do you understand what that means?" "It means we'll have modern equipment. It means we can farm more efficiently. It means you'll be making payments of $2,200 a month for the next 7 years. It means if we have one bad crop year, one drought, one market crash, Those payments will bury us. It means you just put a noose around this farm's neck and handed the bank the other end of the rope. Dad, everyone's upgrading. Everyone's modernizing. We can't compete with 40-year-old equipment. Who told you that? What? Who told you we can't compete? The John Deere dealer, the banker who approved your loan, the neighbors who are already drowning in debt. David didn't answer. Let me tell you what competing means, Walter said. Competing means still being here next year. It means not losing the farm your grandfather bought in 1927. It means not becoming another foreclosure sale. That's competing, David. Everything else is just appearing successful while you're going broke. You don't understand modern farming. I understand debt, and I understand that this farm has survived the Depression, the Dust Bowl, 3 droughts and 2 recessions because we never borrowed more money than we could pay back in a single good year. You just tried to change that. More silence. Come home tonight, Walter said. We need to talk about this face to face. He hung up before David could respond. Let me stop here and ask you something. Have you ever had to stop someone you love from making a huge mistake? Have you ever had to choose between being liked and being right? Drop a comment and tell me, because Walter Jennings made that choice, and it almost destroyed his relationship with his son, but it also saved the farm. David Jennings had graduated from Kansas State University in 1980 with a degree in agricultural economics. He'd come back to the farm full of ideas about modernization and efficiency and scaling up. He'd read all the literature, attended all the conferences, talked to all the experts, and every single one of them said the same thing. To succeed in modern agriculture, you needed to get bigger, get better equipment, and use leverage to accelerate growth. It made sense on paper. The math worked in the projections. Bigger equipment meant you could farm more acres. More acres meant more revenue. More revenue meant you could service more debt. More debt meant you could expand faster. It was a beautiful theory. It was also destroying farms across the Midwest. David had watched neighbors his father's age struggle with old equipment, had seen them fall behind, had heard the jokes about farmers still using tractors from the 50s. He didn't want that for his family's farm. He didn't want to be the guy everyone felt sorry for. So he'd gone to the John Deere dealer, talked to the salesman, looked at the new 4450s with their turbocharged engines and 16-speed transmissions and sound-suppressed cabs. He'd imagined himself driving those machines, imagined what his college friends would think, imagined proving to everyone that Jennings' farm was modern and successful and forward-thinking. The financing was easy, too easy. The banker had barely asked any questions. With David's degree and the farm's history and the collateral value of the land, getting approved for $120,000 took less than an hour. He'd signed the papers, ordered the tractors, set up delivery, and never told his father, because he knew what Walter would say, knew his father would pull out the ledgers and show him the numbers, would explain about payments and interest and risk, would ask questions David didn't want to answer. So David had made an executive decision. He was a partner. He was educated. He was the future of the farm. He'd ordered the tractors, and his father had sent them back before they ever touched the ground. The conversation that night in the farmhouse kitchen was the hardest either of them had ever had. Walter sat at the table with the farm's financial records spread out in front of him. 34 years of ledgers, every income, every expense, every decision documented in careful handwriting. David sat across from him, arms crossed, jaw tight. "Do you know how much this farm made last year?" Walter asked. "Around $42,000, I think. $41,630, after all expenses. That's our net income. That's what we lived on, what we saved, what we reinvested in the operation." Walter pulled out a calculator. "Your tractor payments would be $26,400 per year. That's 63% of our entire net income, for equipment payments alone. But we'd be able to farm more efficiently. We'd make more money. How? Show me the math. David shifted uncomfortably. We could cover our acres faster, get planting done quicker, harvest sooner. We've got 400 acres, David. We already cover that fine with the equipment we have. What exactly would we do faster? We could lease more ground, expand the operation. With what money? After making tractor payments, we'd have $15,000 left over for living expenses, savings, maintenance, seed, fertilizer, fuel, everything else. How are we supposed to expand on $15,000? David didn't have an answer. Walter leaned forward. Let me tell you what happens next. We make the first few payments. Everything seems fine. Then we have a hailstorm, or prices drop, or input costs go up. Suddenly we're scrambling. We skip maintenance on other equipment. We defer savings. We start charging operating costs on credit. The next year, something else goes wrong. Maybe it's drought. Maybe it's an equipment breakdown we can't afford to fix because all our money's going to tractor payments. So we borrow more, take out an operating loan, tell ourselves it's temporary. Year 3, the bank starts asking questions. Our debt-to-income ratio is off. They want us to put up more collateral. Maybe we refinance the land, get a better interest rate, spread the payments out. Feels like we're solving the problem, but really we're just digging deeper. Walter's voice got quieter. Year 4, something major happens. Really bad crop. Equipment failure, medical emergency, doesn't matter what. The point is, we can't make the payments. We ask the bank for forbearance. They say no. They call the note. Year 5, we're standing in the yard watching an auctioneer sell off everything we own because we couldn't service debt we never should have taken on in the first place. He looked at David. I've watched that exact scenario play out on 17 farms in this county in the last 6 years. 17 families who lost everything because they believed the lie that debt equals growth. David stared at the numbers spread across the table, at the 34 years of careful record-keeping, at the evidence of his father's discipline and restraint. I just wanted us to be successful, he said quietly. We are successful. We own this farm free and clear. We make a living. We survive bad years. That's success, David. Everything else is just theater. But everyone says everyone's wrong. The dealers are wrong because they make money selling equipment. The banks are wrong because they make money lending money. The experts are wrong because they're not the ones making the payments. Walter closed the ledger. I sent those tractors back because I love you, and I love this farm, and I will not watch either one of you destroyed by debt. They sat in silence for a long time. Finally, David spoke. What do we do now? Now you call the dealership tomorrow morning and cancel the financing agreement. Tell them it was a mistake. Then you come work with me in the field, and I'll show you how we've survived this long without new equipment. And if I don't? Walter's expression hardened. Then you find your own farm to destroy. This one's mine until I'm dead, and I won't let you leverage it into bankruptcy. If you're still watching this, if this story is hitting close to home, do me a favor and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's feeling the pressure to spend money they don't have. Someone who needs permission to say no to debt. David cancelled the financing agreement the next morning. It was humiliating. The dealer was confused and annoyed. The banker was disappointed. David's college friends, when they eventually heard the story, thought he was crazy, but he did it. And then he went to work learning why his father's way had survived when everyone else's way was failing. Walter took him through every piece of equipment on the farm, showed him how to maintain it, how to troubleshoot problems, how to fix things with basic tools instead of paying dealer mechanics. He taught David to read the ledgers differently, to see the farm not as a business that needed to grow, but as a system that needed to sustain. To understand that some years you made money and some years you just survived, and both were equally important. Most importantly, he taught David to think in decades instead of quarters, to ask not, "What will make us the most money this year?" but "What decision gives us the best chance of still being here in 20 years?" It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't impressive. It didn't look like success to outsiders, but it worked. The farm crisis of the late 1980s hit Marshall County hard. Between 1985 and 1990, 31 farms in the county foreclosed. Good farmers, hard workers, people who'd done everything the experts told them to do. Almost all of them had one thing in common: equipment debt they'd taken on in the early 80s, believing that bigger and newer would save them. The Jennings farm survived, not because they had better equipment or farmed better ground or got luckier with weather. They survived because when everyone else was leveraging up, Walter Jennings was staying disciplined. When everyone else was chasing growth, he was protecting sustainability. And when his own son tried to join the debt parade, Walter did something that took more courage than anyone watching understood. He said no. He sent the truck back. He chose his farm's survival over his son's approval. In 1993, 7 years after the tractor incident, Walter signed over half the farm to David, made him a legal partner, equal decision-making authority. By then, David understood why. He'd seen the foreclosures, attended the auction sales, watched families he'd known his whole life pack up and leave. He'd learned what his father already knew, that debt doesn't care about good intentions or hard work or smart plans. Debt only cares about payments, and payments don't stop just because you had a bad year. The first major decision David made as co-owner was about equipment. Their old farmall was dying, needed a complete engine rebuild that would cost more than the tractor was worth. They needed to replace it. David researched used equipment, found a 1971 International 1066 at an auction 3 counties over. Solid machine. Good hours, needed some work, but fundamentally sound. The auction estimate was $6,000. David told his father about it, and Walter's response was one sentence: "Can we pay cash for it?" "Yes." "Then go buy it." David bought it for $5,800, spent another $1,200 on repairs and maintenance, had a working tractor for $7,200 total. A new equivalent machine would have cost $45,000 and required financing. That decision, that moment when David chose his father's values over his own ego, that's when Walter knew the farm would survive another generation. Let me ask you something, and I want you to be honest in the comments. If you were David, would you have forgiven your father for embarrassing you like that, for sending those tractors back in front of the delivery driver? Because it took David years to understand that his father wasn't trying to humiliate him. He was trying to save him. The years rolled on. Walter retired in 2001 at age 67, signed the entire farm over to David, the same 400 acres his father had bought in 1927, still owned free and clear, still operating on the same principles of discipline and restraint that had carried it through the Depression. David farmed it for another 20 years, slowly expanded to 600 acres by leasing ground from neighbors who retired, never financed equipment, never took on land debt, never confused growth with success. He taught his own children the same lessons his father had taught him, showed them the ledgers, explained about debt and payments and sustainability, told them the story about the tractors that never made it off the truck. By 2015, David's daughter Emily was 25, fresh out of agricultural school, full of ideas about precision agriculture and GPS guidance and variable rate technology. She came to David with a proposal: new planter with all the latest technology, cost $90,000, financing available through the manufacturer at low interest rates. David listened to her presentation, looked at the numbers, considered the arguments. Then he said, "Can we pay cash for it?" Emily blinked. "Dad, it's $90,000. Nobody pays cash for equipment like that." "Then we're not buying it." "But we need to modernize. We need to—" David held up his hand. Let me tell you a story about two John Deere tractors and a truck that never made it past the end of the driveway. He told her everything, about his arrogance, about his father's courage, about the farms that failed and the one that survived. When he finished, Emily was quiet for a long time. "So what do we do?" she finally asked. "We find a used planter that does what we need. We pay cash for it. We maintain it well. We save the difference. And we stay out of debt." Emily nodded slowly. Okay. Yeah, okay, I get it." And David realized that the lesson had successfully passed to a third generation. Walter Jennings passed away in 2018 at the age of 84. He died in the same farmhouse he'd lived in for 66 years, on land that had been in his family for 91 years, surrounded by family who'd never known what it was like to farm under the weight of debt. At his funeral, David stood up to speak. He told the story about the tractors, about the truck turning around in the driveway, about the phone call and the hard conversation and the decision that saved their farm. "My father embarrassed me that day," David said, "made me look like a fool in front of the dealer and the banker and everyone who heard the story, and I hated him for it." He paused. "But he was right. Those tractors would have destroyed us. The debt would have crushed us. We would have become just another foreclosure statistic in a decade defined by them. Instead, we're still here, still farming, still debt-free, still choosing sustainability over appearance. And that's his legacy, not the acres, not the equipment, the discipline, the restraint, the courage to say no when everyone else is saying yes." David's voice broke. "He sent the truck back because he loved me more than he cared about looking successful. And it took me 20 years to understand that." The Jennings farm is still operating today. David's daughter, Emily, runs it now, farming the same ground her great-great-grandfather bought during the Depression. She still uses some equipment that's older than she is, still maintains it herself, still makes decisions based on what she can pay cash for rather than what she can finance. And every spring, when the John Deere dealer calls with offers on new equipment, Emily tells them the same thing her father and grandfather told them. "If I can't pay cash for it, I don't need it." So let me leave you with this. Right now, someone's trying to sell you something: equipment, land, technology, expansion. And they're telling you that financing is normal, that debt is just a tool, that you can't succeed without leverage. But the Jennings family proved something different. They proved that saying no to debt, even when it's embarrassing, even when it costs you relationships, even when everyone thinks you're wrong, that's how you build something that lasts. Walter Jennings sent the truck back before it entered the farm. His son thought he was crazy. The dealer thought he was difficult. The banker thought he was foolish. But 30 years later, the Jennings farm is still operating while most of their neighbors are gone. And those two tractors that never made it off the truck, they would have been paid off in 1993, but the farm they would have destroyed, that's forever. If this story changed how you think about debt and farming and generational wealth, I need you to do 3 things. First, subscribe to this channel. Second, share this video with someone who's facing pressure to finance equipment they can't afford. Third, drop a comment telling me, have you ever had to say no to something everyone else said yes to? Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.